evening, and welcome to another new and exciting season of the Press Box. I'm Vanessa Johnson, and for the next 30 minutes, I'll be your host. With me are Reynolds and Marcks. How are you guys doing?
All right, pretty good.
That's good. Okay, let's start off talking about the Atlanta Knights. What's the ups and downs of this team?
Jay, when I look at this club, some of the ups have been putting LaRouche on the same line with Drulia. He had 3 straight 2-goal games and really got a lot of offense for a team that sometimes is really inconsistent and struggles. That's one of the things I really like about this club is that I think they have 2 lines that they can put out there and get a lot of production. And that's something that a lot of IHL teams don't have.
Yeah, Drewley is a key. I think he's played great pretty much all year, and they need to mix up, go first line a little more. When they got 3 lines, you can go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 like that. Also, I think they need to use Edgerton more in non-special situations. He's a great penalty killer, and he's great on the power play, but they never seem to put him out there, you know, when it's 5-on-5 and the game's on the line. I think they might be relying on the Drulia line a little too much, but their goaltending is what's going to keep them in this thing, okay? So if their goaltending gets a playoff kind of ready to go towards the end of the season, I think the Knights will be fine.
Well, when you talk about the goaltending and then we start talking about the downs, a lot of times, for example, when the Knights blew a 3-goal third-period lead to Phoenix, there was a lot of changing of the goaltending that game, and there was even a change before the shootout. I really don't think that's a problem. I think that this team struggles a lot with the puck in their own end. A lot of times you see them run into one another. They just do not know how to bring the puck out, and a lot of times they just fool around in their own end, and good teams with good veteran players who have NHL experience are going to come in there and take it away and make you pay the price. I really think that's a weakness on this team, and I think that has something to do with the coaching to try and take care of that situation. That is a big weakness on that club, and I don't know if you've noticed it, but when I go to the games, they really struggle in their own end.
I haven't noticed that. I'll have to look for that, though.
How do you think they'll do tonight? Yes, I think they play Fort Wayne at home.
Well, it just depends.
Right now they're behind 1-0, and they've had 15 shots on goal, and Fort Wayne's had 2. So that shows you right there that somebody's not. They're not playing good defense, I guess. They're shutting down the shots, but then the one shot that they had was an unassisted shorthanded goal. They relax. You might be right about this playing in your own end because they relax when they're a man up. They don't seem to get it done on the power play.
Okay, we have a phone call. Thank you for calling. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I was wondering about Ensminger leaving Georgia, and where do you think Hines Ward will go? Do you think he'll go towards Tennessee or Florida State?
Good question. Florida State right now has redshirted a great quarterback, Thad Busby, out of Pace High last year. So if Hines Ward wants to play anytime soon, he's going to have a long wait. I think Tennessee is going to get Peyton Manning. I think really, Peyton Manning's down to Ole Miss and Tennessee. It's going to come down to one of those 2 schools, I think. I think Hines Ward wants to stay close to home. He's got a mother that's very dependent upon him. She can barely speak the language. And I still think Georgia's got a very good shot at him. Georgia's going to sign 1 or 2 quarterbacks at the most, but losing Steve Ensminger, that hurts. That just hurts Georgia's offense.
What do you think Zaire will do? I mean, he can't really go into the NFL, can he?
He can go to the Canadian Football League.
I think Zaire is going to stay, and not only that, don't be surprised if Georgia already has somebody in their mind to come in. I think to take Ensminger's place. Marion Campbell's got a lot of ties with NFL people, so don't be surprised if you see an NFL person coming in for that job.
It's true. Thanks for the call. Okay, moving on to the NFL, let's talk about Kansas City upset over Houston. A lot of people thought that Kansas was going to go and lose this game.
Well, Jay, when I look at this, I think that one of the keys here is that everyone was talking about Buddy Ryan and his defense. And what happened was that Kansas City's defense kept them in this football game. It was only 10-0 at halftime, and I really thought that Houston was outplaying these guys, but somehow the defense kept them in the football game, and they had 9 sacks in that game.
Okay, I don't know if it's Kansas City's defense so much as Houston's offense stinks, okay? And you heard Buddy Ryan say it all year long. You heard me say it here. You can't do that. Their defense was playing good enough so where if they could have run the ball in a standard set, they could have extended the lead. I know they only got up 10-0, but their offense just stunk. Then finally when a couple turnovers gave Kansas City a lead, I think it was 21-13 at one time, And then all of a sudden Houston can't move the ball, and then at the end of the game they couldn't move the ball. It was, I just think that Houston, I'm not a big Buddy Ryan fan, although he can coach defense. They had a good enough defense to win that game, okay? The Houston offense, and you're saying Kansas City defense played good. Yeah, they were fired up because of all the Buddy Ryan talk, but Houston's offense just stinks, okay? And it had the last year and the year before, and when the crunch time comes, they can't. It's a lot like the Falcons. They got good personnel, but you have to be able to switch to a tight end, fullback kind of offense when you're going to grind it out. And Houston can't do that. They didn't do that, and now they're watching at home.
The way I look at it is that Kansas City had a chance to stay in the game, and I think their defense did keep them in the football game. And when you do that and then give Joe Montana a chance to beat you at the end of the game, you usually know what happens.
Speaking of Montana, do you think you can pull another one off in Buffalo?
Well, I'll tell you what, Jay, when you look at it, Kansas City's had three. This will be a third emotional game in a row. Their first playoff game with Pittsburgh at home, this game at Houston, that had to be very emotional. Now they're going to have to just start from scratch all over again, get the emotion going high again for a third straight week. I think it's going to be hard to do that for this football team. I think that Buffalo is going to have a better running game, and I think running the football is going to be important here. I think Kansas City is not going to be able to run the ball well up there. And I think Buffalo's going to win.
I think as far as Montana goes, you look for that elbow to get real stiff in 20 below zero weather. I mean, he was playing indoors, and you notice how they just sparingly used him all year long. He rarely played back-to-back games. This is going to be a big test, and I don't see his elbow really coming through. He showed he could throw the long ball, but that was after he got warmed up, into the game, and after he missed a couple of long balls. I don't know. I think they're going to let him have the long pass as far as Buffalo's defense. They're going to let Montana throw the long pass to try to take the short passing game away from him. We'll see how he responds. Obviously, he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Yes, I agree.
I'll go for that as well. It'll be really interesting to see how far he can throw a football up with that cold and wind coming out of Orchard Park.
Okay. I'd like to take this time and remind our viewers that this is a live show. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, give us a call at 873-6713. Okay, let's talk about Dallas. Are they going to be ready for San Francisco this week?
Yeah, I think they should be ready. I mean, if there's anyone that can get them ready, Jimmy Johnson can. But, Jay, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Dallas was primed for the picking last week with Green Bay. And
They look kind of sluggish.
They did look sluggish. And I think Green Bay could have had them. They just didn't take advantage of opportunities, Jay.
Yeah, well, Green Bay, it just showed that they're too young. They didn't have any playoff savvy. They had no playoff experience. They kind of felt like they were lucky to be there, whereas a better playoff team would have taken that game from Dallas. Now, Dallas gets a reprieve, though, here. This is going to factor into it. One of the factors in the 49er game will be that Dallas didn't play good, okay, and they won anyway, okay? So now you figure they're due for a good game. However, they played a physical Green Bay team, whereas the Niners didn't play. They had a practice game. The Giants didn't show up for whatever reason, and San Francisco sort of breezed through the game. Dallas had to struggle. Like you said, they were sluggish, but then, that game got kind of intense halfway through the third quarter, and Dallas had to expend not only a lot of injury, but personnel. Harper fell on his head, hurt his neck. Smith, got another shot on the shoulder, and so Dallas is going to go into this game a little bit more banged up than San Francisco. Not just the Emmitt Smith factor. I'm talking about the whole line of scrimmage play. I know that Dallas has a good defensive line, but they're moving people around. They have a good offensive line, but they move people around. And they just got banged on for 4 quarters. So we'll see. I think Dallas will be ready. I think they looked past the Green Bay game and won it anyway. Luxury, I guess, the world champions have.
So you think Dallas is going to be ready despite the injury of Emmitt Smith?
Yeah, I think they have the better defense. I don't know if they're going to be able to move the ball without Emmitt Smith. Even when they put Emmitt Smith in, he's not running full speed, and he certainly can't pick up a blitzing linebacker, okay? Right. You could see in the Green Bay game when it came time for him to step up and block a linebacker or a strong safety on a blitz, he turned to the side and tried to chicken wing it, Right. Well, that ain't going to get it against some team that's really fired up.
Well, I tell you one thing. Those guys for Dallas better be ready to play some defense. That 49er offense was clicking. I mean, there was not anything missing in that lineup against the Giants. And the Giants are a pretty good defensive football team.
But in this game, they only offer token resistance.
Oh,
I'll tell you.
I'm telling you, that had a lot to do with what San Francisco was ready. They're ready to play football. This is a veteran playoff team, and I think that San Francisco is going to be a hard team to stop. Dallas gave up over 300 yards passing to Green Bay with Brett Favre, who throws about 90% of his passes little short dump-offs on the right. You're going against a much more complex offense, and I think San Francisco is going to be able to take advantage of that. And also, Dallas needs to run the football. I don't think they're running the football very well right now. I think San Francisco is going to be able to shut that down. If they can shut down Rodney Hampton the way they did, they certainly have a good shot at shutting down Emmitt Smith.
Jay, what do you think? Do you think San Francisco maintained that?
No,
level play?
I don't. I think that it snowballed on them. You know what I mean? As the game went on, San Francisco did look good, but like I said, the key was the Giants didn't even show up. They were arm tackling and sometimes pointing at each other going, you get him. No, you get him, you know? Well, you can't play like that, you know, especially in the NFL playoffs. I think that Reeves just hasn't learned his lesson on how to prepare a team. Now, as far as the Niners offense goes, it's similar to the Packers offense because Mike Holmgren was the offensive coordinator for the Niners. And so you're going to see that little dump-off stuff. But the Giants came up and tried to drag them down, you know. The Dallas defense is going to come up and stick it to you, okay? You know, when you dump the ball off, you're going to see a linebacker and a safety come flying up there and hit somebody, okay? The Niners didn't have to face that, okay? And as far as Waters goes, you know, he's a good running back, but he's a every other game kind of player, okay? So we'll see if he has a good game. He tends to get up when he's playing against a good back, but we'll just see because I don't think the Niners will click like that against a better defense.
Okay, we have a phone call. Thank you for calling on the air.
Yeah, like you guys new said, looks good.
Thank you.
Had a couple of questions, or I wanted you guys to comment on two things. One was Jimmy Johnson made a statement that if Buddy Ryan gets fired in Houston, he'd be happy to hire him in Dallas. What about that?
I think that may be Jimmy Johnson just trying to start a little controversy and to have a little fun.
No, I think that Jimmy Johnson knows football. Obviously, he's a good coach, and he knows that Buddy Ryan may bring a circus with him, but he's probably the best defensive coordinator in the game. He can shut any team down at any given time.
I think that's exactly what he
Jimmy
meant. I think
Johnson
he was
is
giving Buddy a good vote of confidence there. Also, who's going to be the next Falcons coach? And I'll hang up. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
thanks
for
a
the
lot.
call.
I want to get back to that Jimmy Johnson thing. First of all, when he comes in somewhere, he's in charge. He's not going to have someone like Buddy Ryan come around and show the type of presence that he shows. I mean, here it is. This guy was basically showing up Mike Ditka. I just don't see any way Jimmy Johnson would put up with that. I mean, he has a hard enough time putting up with his boss. Not too many other people can say that. So I don't think he would tolerate him at all. As for the Falcons' new coach, this is, again, the Smith family is going to come down to cash. I think that Mike Ditka could possibly take the job, but Jay, I think you'd have to pay him $1 million a year, and you have to sign him for 5 years.
Exactly.
I think the Falcons are looking at June Jones, where they'd have to pay him only half that much, maybe sign him for 2 or 3 years. He would take the job, and then if Joe Gibbs ever happens to want to come back around, having June step aside instead of Mike Ditka is a lot less expensive. I think the Smith family wants a guy like Joe Gibbs.
But I would rather see Ditka in there because I think he's a much better coach. What do you think, Jay?
You're not going to see an established name coach here. I think that they've showed through the last coaching changes that they're always, other than Glanville, they brought Glanville in here because they were familiar with him. Other than that, they hired Lehman Bennett, hired Dan Henning. You know, they're always going to go after a top-notch assistant. That way you don't have to pay him, like Ty was saying, $1 million a year. You pay him a little bit more than they got as an assistant coach. And with June Jones being here and interviewing for the job, that's going to be the easiest for them. You know, it's like, to hell with winning games or putting people in the seats. The Smiths have showed a propensity to just make what's ever easiest for them. You know, it's like, here you got the offense in place. The players like June Jones. You know, it's like, what does that mean? You know, they come out, Taylor has a press conference, says, we interviewed June Jones, the players all like him. It's like, well, that doesn't mean that they're going to be a successful coach just because the players like him. So I think if you look at this from the Smiths' perspective, they'll probably go with June Jones because it's easiest, okay? And then they can hire a defensive coordinator, you know, like a Marion Campbell. I know he's at Georgia, but, you know, somebody like that they can bring in and say, here's your defensive coordinator. and they'll go with it, and they won't win, and they'll probably change again in the next couple of years, and they'll hire another assistant coach.
Right,
So they might as well.
Jones is easiest for the transition. I think they want to give themselves some flexibility in the near future.
I think they might as well spend the money for Dick and now so they won't have to worry about it later. But we have a phone call. Thank you for calling. Call you on the air.
Yes. Hello?
Hi.
How you doing?
Fine.
Okay, I have a question. I think the reason the Houston game Sunday,
Yeah.
I think the reason they lost because that run and shoot just don't really work.
The Chuck and Duck?
If you look at the 49ers in Dallas, I don't care how good your defense is, but that run and shoot just don't work to me. That's what I think the Falcons need to change up on.
Okay, thanks for the phone call.
Thanks
Okay.
for the call.
Well, Jay, that is one of the things you always pointed out, that you don't like that offense. I really don't like it either. It's hard to sustain a consistent running game, and you need that in the NFL nowadays. And that could have something to do with Houston losing this football game, although I think that Kansas City's defense had a whole
No,
lot
I
more
mean,
to
yeah,
do with
Kansas
this.
City, they played good, but when you're playing against a run-and-shoot team, you don't have to take too much away from them, You double on the corners, or you play a three-deep zone, and what are they going to do, dump the ball in front of you? It's just the run-and-shoot is proven to not work, okay? I mean, Detroit, as soon as they got away from it, they started getting better, okay? The Falcons, they strung, 4 or 5 wins together, or something like that. They got better in midseason, but that's when they started running the ball. It's just a running game and defense is what wins in the NFL. Okay, and the Falcons didn't have a good defense, and they had that run and shoot. And Houston, they had a good defense, but they had to run and shoot. It's like, okay, so I just think that, like the caller said, it's never going to work. Okay, it's a gimmick type thing. Gimmicks don't work in the NFL. Maybe you can win one game like that by surprising a team.
Right.
But it's a long season, and everyone does their scouting, and everyone's going to be prepared for it.
It's true. All right, we have a caller. Thank you for calling. Caller, you're in the air.
Yes, how about Billy White Johnson as a coach? He's a former player, he knows the team well, and he knows how to deal with the Smiths.
What do you think, Jay?
I think that he doesn't have enough resume to bring with him. Okay, it's easy to throw names like that on the table. Like I heard over the course of the last couple of weeks that Mike Singletary would be a good coach. Well, you got to first get involved in coaching.
Right.
You can't just hand somebody a job like that, or they're going to struggle with the other aspect of it. Sure, they can design a defense or an offense and help your team, but there's so much to being a head coach in the NFL. You got to handle the press, you got to handle the upper management, and you got to be sort of a go-between between the players and the system. And I think that you really have to have more coaching experience in order to take a job like that. Don't get me wrong, White Shoes Johnson is a great guy. He's just probably not a very
You
good
don't think
coach.
he could take the jump from high school level to the NFL?
No,
way.
not at all.
No
Ask
way.
Jerry Faust how you jump from high school.
I agree totally
higher
with
level.
Jay on this. It's an experience factor. To be a coach in the NFL and the time that these people spend, that's why people like Joe Gibbs and Dick Vermeil got out, was because they had to spend so much time. And the time and having the experience and having good coaches working for you, you get to that level by becoming a coordinator, and then moving on up through those positions to become a head coach. It takes a long time.
A
Coaches
good
that don't pay
coordinator.
their dues are figureheads anyway. So, what could he do? They could hire him and say, okay, we want you to address the press and the media, but these coordinators are going to do all the work. Well, who would want a job like that other than me?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for the
Thanks
phone
for the-
call.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's talk about college basketball. Who is going to stay number one? We've had 4 teams up there since the season began.
Well, I think that this is the type of season where you're going to see that all year long, and it's not just with number one. Here it is. You see California cruise down there to the McHale Center and play Arizona down there in the desert. They knock those guys off, and then they head on and play Arizona State, who's not nearly as good over in Tucson, and they get beat. So it's not just at number one. I think that you're just going to see these types of these games going on all the time where anyone can win as long as they have some pretty good players. Oh, it doesn't surprise me one bit, and honestly, I don't think being number one is that important. What's important is where you're placed in that tournament in March and who you're matched up against. That's what's important.
Which tough teams you got to go through to get to the Final Four,
Right.
right?
That's right.
That's what's important. Yeah, as far as number one goes, there'll be a new number one every week because I think college football has achieved what the NFL is going after. There really is parity in college basketball. There really is parity in college basketball because you can be in Arkansas and lose to an Alabama, and
Right.
and that's just going to happen all the time, especially in conference play. Like you brought up the Pac-10. Okay, well UCLA I think now is number one, right?
Right, but then they're
Well-
going to have they
yeah.
got to game Thursday with Arizona.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just the better teams. It's like when they play Washington State and Washington, they're going to struggle in their building because these teams just look at the schedule and go, hey, in February we got UCLA. We're going to get up for that game.
You got it.
Okay, we have a phone call. Thank you for calling you on the air.
Hello, this is Rudy Bass. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, Rudy Bass. I'd like to know, into the Falcons. I'm a season ticket holder, 25-year season ticket holder. I've only missed 4 games since the Falcons have been here. And could anybody explain to me why is it that we can have as many coaches as we have had? Every coach has the run, pass, kick mode. How can that happen? How can all of the coaches have the same ideas instead of any new ideas to take us into playoffs and things of that nature?
Okay, thanks for the
So-
phone call. Well, I think it comes down to your ownership, is what it comes down to. And when you have owners that know what they're doing, they're going to find people who know how to win football games. And then when you have other owners that really don't know what they're doing, and the Smith family, I think, is just evidence of that because they have not been a super achiever here through all these years. I just don't think they know good football men.
What
They
do you
don't.
think, Jay?
They don't, and I think that really came to the forefront when they had Lehman Bennett here. Now, Lehman Bennett knew he didn't have the talent, so he tried to keep the game close and then win it at the end. And they went to the playoffs 3 out of the 5 years he coached.
Right.
And the owners went, we need to get to another level now, and canned him. It was like, boy, we're sick of going to the playoffs. We want to take a big step back here and go 3-13 for 3 more years. I think that showed what Ty's point was, that the owners don't know what they're doing. And that's why the Falcons are struggling. It starts at the top, If they were to hire someone and say, you're in charge of the football operation, and that guy would be able to, take the reins, everyone would be on the same page. There'd be a central direction, like a GM. And I just have experience from being a Packer fan. The Packers struggled for, 20 years. And then they finally went, let's go get Ron Wolf, make him the GM, let him do all the football decisions. He did. In the last 2 years, they've turned their program around. So I guess the Falcons need some strong central GM figure that has a tremendous football background, and then you'll see all the decisions align themselves towards winning football games.
All right, I agree. Okay, getting back to college basketball, a lot of confusion there. Who's the best who has the best conference?
Well, I
there's no
think that
question
right
about
now, I think you can make an argument here. The first league that comes into my mind is the ACC because of their past performance in the NCAA tournament. I mean, you've had Duke winning a couple of championships, and you got Carolina and all their gobs of talent over there that Dean has. Then
Georgia Tech's pretty good, too.
Tech's a pretty good club, but I tell you what, the ACC, I look at them as being Duke and Carolina at the top, not necessarily in that order.
No,
And then the next level down, you have Maryland, who was a surprise this year, Georgia Tech, and Wake Forest. Then I think the next level down, you have Virginia, who might be on the bubble, NIT, NCAA. The final 3 teams, I don't think are going to get postseason play. And that's the way I break down the ACC. The Big Ten is the conference that you can make the argument for. At one time last week, they had 5 teams in the top 20. And they could possibly put 7 teams in the NCAAs, considering if they don't kill each other first up there in that league. But I just think the Big Ten is loaded with several talented teams, Jay, including that surprising Wisconsin team.
Well, they're just playing defense. I think the Big Ten shows that they're getting back to where you were talking about the ACC. They're playing good defense now. You got Indiana always played good defense. Okay, now you got Minnesota playing good defense. Stu Jackson's got Wisconsin playing good defense. You're gonna have your 20, 30-point scorers. Because anybody can get hot. But when a team can master the various defensive concepts and change them up through the course of the game, Purdue's another one. I mean, you know, that's
Indiana
what they
faces
do. You know,
Purdue.
Indiana tends to play man-to-man, and so he goes and gets those man-to-man defensive players. But the rest of them can change that defense on you now, and that's why I think the Big Ten is the best conference. But Ty's made a good point. They're going to knock each other off. And so at the end of the year, you're going to see every Big Ten team with 3 or 4 losses because everybody in the conference is good.
I'll tell you what the NCAA committee is going to think of the Big Ten. They're going to put, I think, the Big Ten champion as the #1 seed in the Midwest. You may see the Big Ten champion be rated number 7, 8, or 9 just because of their record. They may put them as a #1 seed in the Midwest because if you win that league, you've really accomplished something.
That's a good point. Okay, we have a phone call. Thank you for calling. Calling you on the air.
Okay, appreciate it. Okay, I agree that the Falcons, need improvement, but how much do you think injury has to do with the Falcons losing and even other teams losing also? All right, thanks.
Thanks for the
Thanks
call.
for the call.
Well, I think that he hit the point, Jay. Other teams have injuries as well, so it just depends on. I think that comes down to coaching and how your coaches can adjust to that. I think that's plain and simple.
That's a part of the game. And I'll tell you, any head coach that hides behind the injury factor is not a good coach. He's just pointing fingers and trying to keep his paycheck coming the next year. And, Glanville was allowed to do that last year. He said, oh, we got decimated into defensive injuries. It's like, and so they went and got Jumpy Gaithers and Pierce Holt, and they said, okay, now we're deep. Well, they got injured again, and he said, oh, injuries really took us out of our game plan. Well, that's a bunch of bunk. I mean, like Ty said, every team has injuries, okay? And you don't have to look any farther than this week. The Packers made it to the second round of the playoffs with no inside linebackers, and 3/5 of their offensive line was hurt. Well, they had competent backups in place. That's what Plan B is for. That's what the draft is for. And you have to get 40 to 45 people that can play on the field. You don't get the best 22 and go, whatever, the other guys are yes men, or good special teamers. You have to have 40 people on your roster that can step up and play in an NFL game. And the Falcons didn't do that. They had guys on the bench that were good Glanville men and would run through a brick wall, but when you put them in the game and the game was on the line, they didn't know what defense they were in, they didn't know what offense they were running, and consequently, he pointed at everybody else. Oh, it was his fault, it was his fault, it was his fault.
Right.
So he's out of here.
Okay. One last note on college basketball. What do you guys think about the Dogs being tied with Kentucky for second?
Well, pictures can be deceiving. This is the same crummy club that knows how to miss free throws and knows how to make a lot of turnovers, and that was evident in almost blowing a game at Knoxville and losing a game at Mississippi State. Georgia, I think, will be lucky to make the NCAAs this year.
Ooh, I don't think so. I think they're a good team, and I think they're going to keep playing. I think that maybe they are oriented a little more towards their conference play, but they really need to work on free throws, like you said, if they're going to go to the NCAA.
They did play well against Kentucky. You got to give them that. I won't take it away.
And the Tennessee game, maybe they struggled, but anytime you beat the #1 team in the nation, you're going to have a letdown the next week. And the fact that they could have a letdown and win the game showed me that they may be serious about contending.
Right, but the surprise of the SEC is Florida.
13-2, they got a home game with Kentucky tonight.
Right after that Purdue-Indiana thing.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to thank our callers and viewers for watching the show. Join us next week, next Tuesday, 9 o'clock, Channel 12.